Do you like wolves? Do you like Vikings? Do you like space? Do you like wolves, Vikings and space together? Then the Space Wolves, they could be for you. The Space Wolves are somewhat polarizing. Some people really love them, and some people hate them as a legion. Me personally, I love them and have a Space Wolves army of my own. Anyway, who are the Space Wolves? The Space Wolves are the 6th Space Marine Legion. They gained a ferocious reputation during the Great Crusade, where they become the Emperor's instrument of punishment, otherwise known the Emperor's Executioner. They are defiant of authority, but also considered some of the Imperium's greatest and most loyal warriors. The Legion's early days were different compared to many of the other legions we've already spoken about. Originally, they were recruited from hyper-violent tribesmen on Terra, and they were mostly not present and held back in isolation by the Emperor during the Unification Wars. This was until they were unleashed on the Battle of Delsvan and viciously assaulted the enemy lines. They would also then go on to massacre a city in the said war. The early Legion was devastating, although they severely lacked discipline. However, since the discovery of Leman Russ, the Space Wolves, or the Vilka Fenrika Wolves of Fenris, hail from their home world of Fenris. Fenris is a death world, and not just a wolf from Viking lore and mythology. The flora and fauna is hostile to human life. The weather is also hostile to human life. The planet itself has an extremely elliptical orbital path. They have long, cold winters, where the temperatures will drop so far that most of the planet ices over. And in the short summer months, they're very close to their star, where you'll see volcanoes erupting, lava flows, and churning seas. And presently on Fenris is the location of the fortress monastery called the Fang, because why would they not get another wolf reference in? The Primarch is quite an interesting one. So when the Primarchs were scattered across the galaxy, the Primarch of the Space Wolves, Leman Russ, of course ended up on Fenris. Initially he was raised by tribesmen, before eventually being raised by King Thengir. Eventually, the stature of Leman would grow and he would become the Wolf King. Unlike the previous Primarchs in our other videos, when the Emperor would show up, they would fight, with Leman being bested for the first time in his life. Leman Russ would then be trusted and taken over the reins of the Space Wolves, and they would claim many more victories. In one of these victories, they would even obtain an STC for a tank, which was then named after the Primarch himself, the Leman Russ. The Leman Russ and Space Wolves are even hinted at being the reason for the disappearance of the 2 lost legions, and that fits in quite nicely with the Space Wolves being the Emperor's executioner. The Space Wolves were a prominent part of the story in the Horus Heresy, although not in the way that you would think. They weren't present during the Siege of Terra or the Drop Site Massacre, although they were involved in something called the Burning of Prospero. Yeah, that thing. I won't go into it in too much detail in this video because the Burning of Prospero itself is one of my favourite stories in the Horus Heresy, and it deserves a video all to itself. But importantly, it was the Space Wolves not being present during the Siege of Terra to help his father, which left Leman Russ changed. He became infuriated, restless, and would gather some of his best forces and lead him into the Eye of Terror. Russ pledging to come back in the end times, when the Space Wolves would need him most. And with things being completely dour at the moment, I would say the entire Imperium is not in a good place. I would not be surprised if Leman Russ was the next Loyalist Primarch to come back. So with Russ gone, What's next and happening now with the Space Wolves? Well, with the High Lords of Terror taking the reins and their paranoid nature of something like the heresy happening again, it helped lead to the development of the Codex Astartes by Rabute Gulliman. And if you aren't aware of what the Codex Astartes is, this contains all the doctrines the Space Marine chapter should use, from recruitment to tactics to size. This was never fully accepted by the Space Wolves, other than a few parts, such as the successor chapters. Initially, this didn't work with their first successor chapter, the Wolf Brothers, and this was due in part to the instability of the Gene Seed and the massive devastation to the Gene Seed in the Battle of the Fang. However, with the Ultima founding, they do now have their first stable successor chapters, such as the Moon Eaters, Wolf Spear and Ice Fangs, although initially the Space Wolves were weary of their Primaris brothers. Moving on, the Space Wolves are now fully involved in the Indomitus Crusade. So this is an overview that just touched on the surface of the Space Wolves, and of course there is so much more to every legion that we will eventually get to, but I thought a 4-hour video wouldn't be something someone would want to go over in one sitting. I hope you do enjoy this overview though, as well as the others in the playlist. I'll link them in the description. The next legion in this series will of course be the Imperial Fists. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe if you are new. More subs obviously mean it's easier for me to start creating more and more videos down the line. Either way, I appreciate everyone for watching so much. I will catch you next time.